Welcome back to Daily Verse Devotion. Today we enter the final chapter and the darkest one of this apocalyptic journey through the fall of angels and the haunting consequences they left behind. The great flood swept away everything on the face of the earth. Every living being with breath was buried under the furious waters of God's judgment. It seemed the story had ended, but the Bible never said every soul had died. Something remained, silent, shapeless, wordless, yet still moving among mankind. It was not the Watchers, not the Nephilim in flesh and bone, but cursed spirits, the offspring of forbidden union between angel and human. They did not vanish. They were not received. And that eternal exile gave birth to a kind of being never formally named. The demonic spirits. They came from destruction, but remain among us, like memories that refuse to fade. And to understand who they are and where they now dwell, we must return to where it all began. Next, the spirits that could not die. They were not created by God, but they also cannot be destroyed. Part 1. The spirits that could not die. When the bodies of the Nephilim fell beneath the wrath of heaven, many believed it was the end. The flesh was gone. Their bones dissolved into the mud and floodwaters. But what no one expected was that their souls still lived on. Because they were not like humans. They were not created in the image of God. They were a fusion of spirit and flesh, the result of a union forbidden by heaven. And because they were not spoken into being by the holy word of God, they could not return to the source of light. Yet there was no place for them, no heaven, no hell. Only exile, eternal exile in the in-between realm, formless, rootless, belonging nowhere. Ancient writings, especially the Book of Enoch, chapter 15, declare, the spirits of the hybrid offspring, after the death of their flesh, shall become evil spirits on the earth, harming, deceiving, and dwelling within mankind. For though they were born from heaven, in flesh they lived, and so they became evil spirits among the realms. Enoch 15:8-12. They are a living paradox, born but never recognized, destroyed in body, yet wandering forever in soul. Not angels, yet bearing a twisted trace of heaven's majesty. Not demons by origin, yet filled with hatred and boundless destruction. They are a generation without graves, the screams that never found rest, the darkness that was never given a name. And because no realm accepted them, they are still here, hidden among generations, hidden among men. They are not myth. They are the unfinished continuation of the first sin. But the greater questions still remain. How did these beings, the offspring of rebellion, become demons forever? And why? Can they never be saved? Not even once. Part 2. Born of rebellion, not redemption. Not every soul is made the same, and not every soul can be saved. When the flood destroyed the ancient world, the bodies of the fallen giants, the Nephilim, were swept away in the wrath of God. But their souls remained. Ancient Hebrew writings, especially the Book of Enoch, reveal, the spirits of the giants shall become evil spirits on earth, and shall be called evil spirits. 1 Enoch 15-9. They did not rise to heaven, They did not descend to hell. They were left behind, on earth, bodiless, restless, souls chained, burning with hatred and a hunger for destruction. But why can't they be saved? The answer lies not in their actions, but in their nature. The Nephilim were not born under the covenant of mankind. They were unclean offspring, the result of forbidden unions between fallen angels and the daughters of men. They have no place in the redemptive plan of God. They were not formed in His image. They are a distortion, a fracture that can never be mended within the holy order. And so the souls of the Nephilim became demons forever. They cannot be forgiven. They cannot be redeemed. They have no mediator, and no blood is pure enough to cleanse their very existence. These souls do not seek repentance, because within them there is no remorse. They do not scream out in sorrow, but in rage, because they are bound, unable to continue their destruction. That is why Jesus, though He triumphed over death and offered salvation to mankind, did not come to save the angels, nor their descendants. For surely it is not angels He helps, but Abraham's descendants. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16. There is no cross for the Nephilim, no resurrection for the demonic spirits. And that, too, is a warning for us today. If a soul is born never to be saved, then there are people who are choosing that same fate when they reject grace and give themselves over to darkness, just as the Nephilim once did. We are about to pull back the veil on the post-flood world, where the demonic spirits of the Nephilim still wander and still influence the world around us. Are they still here? And what are they doing among mankind? Part 3. Spirits without bodies, influence without flesh. The demonic spirits of the Nephilim did not vanish after the flood. They endured, and their influence upon mankind has been terrifying. Many believe that after the Great Flood, every trace of the Nephilim was erased, their flesh destroyed, their race extinguished, their sin buried beneath the judgmental waters. But the truth is the opposite. The flood only severed the Nephilim from their bodies. It did not destroy their souls. Ancient Hebrew texts warn us, spirits of the Nephilim roam the earth as demons, afflicting, corrupting, and possessing mankind. 1 Enoch 15:11-12. Without bodies, they became even more dangerous. They are still here, hidden in darkness, operating through the spiritual realm, manipulating the physical world through us. They do not need flesh. They only need a doorway, a rebellious heart, an unbelieving mind, a soul left open to darkness. They whisper through the conscience. They ignite unrest in dreams. They provoke desires left unchecked. And if we are not discerning, an ordinary person can become a vessel for a soul that does not belong to this world. Not all evil comes from mankind. Some comes from those who no longer have bodies, but still have will, still have intellect, and still carry hate. They cannot be redeemed, but they can possess others to keep waging war against God. That is why, in every generation, we see evil that defies logic, evil that surpasses human nature. Because souls that don't belong to this world are still manipulating it. The next part will take us deeper into God's eternal decree for these spirits. No one escapes judgment, not even a disembodied soul. Part 4, the eternal chains beneath the abyss. There is a prison not made by men, not built of stone, not forged with iron, but spoken into existence by holy decree. Tartarus. Not merely a pit, but a verdict carved into eternity. Not merely darkness, but the absence of presence. Here, the fallen are not just restrained, they are cut off from all that is light, all that is life, all that is God. This is where the Watchers were cast. But deeper still, in the lowest circle of that spiritual abyss, Samyaza is chained, not with metal, but with something far more dreadful: the justice of a God who does not forget. Every link of his chain is forged from divine wrath. Every ring burns with a fire no hand can touch, a fire that consumes not flesh, but identity. This punishment is not about pain alone. It is about erasing the voice of rebellion from the fabric of creation. It is about removing a cancer so dangerous it cannot be allowed to speak, to move, or even think freely again. The angels who remained loyal, they dare not look into Tartarus. They remember those who fell, once radiant brothers, now silenced echoes beneath the deep. And what of Samyaza? He no longer roars in defiance. He no longer speaks of thrones or freedom. For here, in this place, he hears only silence. Not peace, but the eternal sound of being forgotten by heaven. This is not just a punishment. It is a cosmic quarantine, a sealing away of spiritual contagion, that it may never infect the holy again. Even now the chains remain. Even now his name is spoken only in dread. And even now we are warned. If God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them down to Tartarus, binding them in chains of gloomy darkness, to be held until the judgment, then what will become of us if we walk the same path? Because these chains, they do not rust, they wait. But Tartarus is not the end. In the next part, we uncover the reason behind this eternal sentence, and why Samyaza bore a punishment heavier than all the rest. Part 5, the strategies of the demonic spirits. They do not merely wander. They do not merely seek shelter. They have a purpose. They have a strategy. After the flood, the world seemed cleansed. But the demonic spirits, souls never shaped by the light, did not need bodies to continue their plan. They crept into the deepest layers of human nature, into will, into thought, into the hunger for power. They are not like the monsters of legend. They do not tear flesh. They do not roar in the night. They do not appear with fangs or claws. They do something far more subtle. They whisper. They whisper into the ears of rulers, into the minds of those who craft ideologies, into the hearts of those who crave power and despise the light. They plant a slow-working poison, the belief that mankind can become gods, that moral law can be rewritten, that heaven is just a symbol, and that truth is whatever the majority says it is. So now they no longer dwell in temples of false gods. They dwell in systems of thought, in education, in art, in religions that have no cross. They do not need to provoke fear. They need to be welcomed. And they have succeeded, not through violence, but through persuasion, not through chains, but through consensus. But if they have sown seeds, the question is, what are those seeds becoming today? We will face that question in the next part. Part 6, the invisible enemy within the world. They no longer have bodies of flesh, but their souls, shadows once housed in giant forms, now wander among humans, like outcasts expelled from every realm, yet unwilling to leave. They do not need to appear in daylight. They hide within the mind, lurking behind ideologies, grasping fear and desire as tools to control those without spiritual discernment. They do not demand worship, because what they crave more is agreement. Every time humanity rejects holiness in the name of compassion, every time sin is redefined as identity, every time a rebel is celebrated as a liberator, these invisible spirits step deeper into a world they were never meant to enter. They breathe blasphemy into culture, into politics, into education. They whisper confusion into the ears of children. They blur the line between light and darkness, between life and death. And they are preparing, not to conquer a physical kingdom, but to destroy the inner life of an entire generation from within. Because the most dangerous enemy is the one that convinces you it does not exist. And if they are preparing for something, then the next question is, what are they waiting for? We now step into the final part, to tear open the veil between this moment and the spiritual war that has never ended. Part 7, the final warning. We have reached the end of a terrifying story, where the fall was no longer just an act, but a legacy of sin passed through generations. The angels were imprisoned. The giants were destroyed. The old world was cleansed by the flood. But the demonic spirits of the Nephilim remained, not as monsters, not with roars and claws, but in the subtle seduction of culture, in ideologies that exalt lust, rebellion, and pride, in the minds of those who reject grace and chase a truth twisted beyond recognition. They dwell among men. They operate in the shadows, luring an entire generation into the same spiritual death they once tasted. Do not think the story is over. Demonic spirits do not sleep. They are waiting for a moment. And they know the final judgment has not yet arrived, but it is drawing near. In that final hour, every soul will be revealed. There will be no hiding place, no gray zone. You will either stand under the protection of the living God or walk beside darkness, unaware. This is the final warning. Examine your spirit. What side are you truly on? Stay awake. Not everything that seems human is human. And remember, what God once condemned still lurks today under a different name. This series has now reached its end. But the question remains, when the hour of judgment comes, where will you stand? If this message stirred something deep within you, subscribe now to Daily Verse Devotion. where truth is not watered down, and the battle for souls is never ignored.